All right, everybody, welcome back to the Friday Night Prepper pre-party show. Hope you all are having a great Friday night. Thank you so much for joining me. Glad to have you here. Let's go into first things first. I want to highlight one of the brands that I work with. Let's go ahead and put this up on the big board here. All right, so tonight I want to say thank you to Jace Medical. This is one of the brands that I really love working with. You guys know Jace Medical. This is where you can get your prescription medications, emergency antibiotics for when poop hits the fan. They've got some new products here I want to show you real quick. They've got the Jace case and the kid. You know the Jace case has got 5 different antibiotics. Now we've got the kids case, which is specifically geared towards children. We've got this one here I want to show you here. This is the parasites case. I'm going to be talking about this one here in a future video, but it's got ivermectin and mebendazole. I hope I pronounced that right. But this has got multiple uses for, I know that price, you see that price, but what you're getting for that actually is multiple uses for treating parasites. Okay, so it is actually a really good buy. And I want to show you two more things here. Of course, you guys know that they also started adding some first aid supplies on here as well. So you guys can check that out. And then I'm going to be showing this one here in a future video as well. They've got some new products. They've got a 30-day food supply bucket and a water filter. So I'm going to be talking about these 30-day food supply buckets here in the near future as well, and probably popping some of that open and showing you what those meals look like. Check that out, right? Like that don't look too bad for apocalypse food, does it? So we're going to be having some fun with that. This is Jace Pantry. Now, down the bottom here, let me go ahead and close this out for you. Down the bottom here, on the bottom of my screen, you'll see I've got my discount code scrolling. Make sure you use that and use that link if you decide to go check them out. That is Jace Medical, my source for emergency antibiotics. All right, let's go over rules real quick. You guys know the deal here. You've been here before. No racism, no sexism. Be kind to the moderators. And if you disagree with somebody, either myself or moderator or somebody in chat, just articulate your point, right? Don't resort to like stupefied name calling. We're better than that here on this channel. Here we actually articulate our point and we debate and we, try to explain why we think a certain way. Right. So we talked last week about Charlie Kirk, and that, I wasn't a Charlie Kirk fan. I never listened to his podcast or anything like that. But one thing I did really respect about Charlie was that he gave people an opportunity to speak their mind, and he encouraged people to debate, and he showed people how to debate. So I absolutely respect that. So if you got something to say against somebody else here, just please articulate your point. Explain why you disagree. Okay. Got a poll for you at the top of the chat. Make sure you vote in that. I would like to know what you think about the TikTok deal that was announced this week. If you think that's going to be a good thing or a bad thing for the United States. Now, let's go ahead and say hi to chat before we get into the main topic. And if you guys use StreamYard, they've added a couple little features here on the side. One of the things, it's actually funny, last week I was talking about how do you spot where you left off. There's actually a way to like mark something with a star now. So like, hi to Scott. Thank you, first one to chat. I can actually put that up on the board there. But now you guys can't see it. I can actually star it so I can see where I left off. Pretty cool. I like it. Also, if you guys ask a question with a question mark, it's supposed to actually show it easier for the streamer to be able to go back and find those questions. Virginia Bushcrafter, it's good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us. Lazarus Long, happy Friday to you as well. Prepper for the Ages, I hope you are having a good Friday. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you. Cold War Prepper Lee, thank you. Welcome, and thanks for joining us from Central Texas. All right, I think that's it so far today. So let me mark my spot where we left off. So Scott Hummer's comment there is where I left off. All right, so if you're tuning in new to the channel, this is part 3 in our series for National Preparedness Month. This is probably going to be my last part in this, but there are other people who are covering national preparedness all month long. So, if you're looking for more prepping material geared towards this month, all you have to do is look up National Preparedness Month or click on the hashtag. In part 1, which you can go back into my live streams and find that, we talked about building a food supply, water purification, building an emergency medication supply, which we were just talking about at the start of this stream, having flashlights, emergency power, things like that. In part 2, last week, we talked a little bit about bugging out, that there are times when you could actually be forced off of your property, and you need to have some kind of plan about where you're going to go and where your family's going to go. We also talked about code words, what my idea of what a go bag should look like, which is different than the stereotypical I'm going out to live in the woods bag. So you can go back and check that out. We also talked about backing up important documents and a little bit about like having some kind of plan for yourself for self-defense. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit more, some advanced concepts in prepping. And I welcome feedback from the chat. If they want to join in on this, throw some ideas out for the audience. If you're watching this on replay, it's a good idea to turn on that live chat if it's available, if it's giving you the option for that. Our audience usually has some really cool suggestions. And there's also a lot of good side chatter that goes on in the chat. So long-term prepping is kind of what I'm thinking here. Like if you were not so much thinking about just storms or loss of power for a few days, things like that. So if you wanted to take your prepping to the next level and you start thinking about intermediate and long-term, you're going to have to start thinking about sustainability. And specifically, we're talking about like food sustainability, right? So I'm going to ask the audience here, when you all think about food sustainability, what are some of the things that come to mind for you? Because my audience is mostly people who are experienced preppers. So I would like for you guys to chime in here and think and give some ideas of what are some things that would, if you were in a long-term survival situation, the supply chain's messed up. Let's say that. Let's say that we're in a pretty bad war. Maybe it's a civil war. Maybe, I don't know, there's some kind of massive drought like the Dust Bowl or the Great Potato Famine, right? And so the food supply is really messed up. You as preppers, what type of skills do you think people should be working on to be ready for longer term situations like that if they're going to take their prepping to this level? So let's see. I think I saw a couple other people popping in here. Prepper for the ages. Yep. Tammy Harder. Hey, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you. Burpee Yoga Uncle, thanks for joining. Appreciate you. Hope you're having a good day. Vanessa Kitty, thank you. Good to see you always. Well, some of the things that come to mind for me are, of course, you saw in the thumbnail, I've got the deer there. Hunting and fishing. If you're going to think about long-term sustainability, you probably want to be skilled in at least one of those, if not both, right? So if you've never done those things before, of course, it's a good idea to learn from somebody else who's a little bit more experienced than you. But you might be surprised that if you don't really know anybody that does those kind of things, that there might be a cooperative extension office near you or a community college. Believe it or not, the community college near us offers classes on fishing. And I believe that we've got some other resources here that'll teach people about hunting, and right up to like everything from hunter safety basics to where you can hunt and how to get your hunting license. Right now, again, if you've never done those things before, it's a good idea to train with somebody who's a bit more experienced, especially with hunting, because there's a lot to, that's a high level skill, right? Like, let's be honest, it's a high level skill, and you're going to need to learn how to like field dress an animal, what to do with all that after you've cleaned it. What are the actual laws, which are going to vary from state to state? Like some states you can put out corn to bait deer to an area. Other states that's illegal. Some states have nuisance laws where, like, if an animal is a nuisance on your property, you might be able to cull it, right? Like when I was in Kentucky, you could cull a lot of animals without a hunting license if they were considered a nuisance to your property. Like, for example, if they were killing your chickens or destroying your fruit trees, things like that. There was some allowance for things like that. Virginia Bushcrafter says canning goods. Yep. Water, solar generator, and of course wood. Absolutely. Oh yeah. So you're talking also about like food and energy too. So I'm glad you brought that up. Let's shift over to that for a second. So this came up in one of the prepping Facebook groups. I was trying to remember where I saw it. Facebook groups. Somebody was asking about in their house, they don't have a wood stove or a fireplace, which a lot of houses don't, and they live in one of the northern states, what are their options for heat? And they were asking if you could run a electric space heater off of a portable solar generator. And the answer to that is generally no. They draw too much power and it will drain the battery too fast. I actually did some tests on that with my solar generator, which is that company went out of business, so no point in even recommending it. If you're looking for good ones, I'll recommend Opus, EcoFlow, Goal Zero, Jackery, Blue Eddy. Any of those are good choices. But they're not going to be able to run a solar heater in most cases. So you're going to need to think about things like propane maybe as an option, or kerosene as an option. Those little Mr. Buddy heaters that you can actually order those off of Amazon, and they will run those little propane canisters. For a small room, those actually will do pretty decent. If you have natural gas on your property, you can install some natural gas heaters into the walls. You can have your oven hooked up to natural gas. In fact, that's how I know that's getting harder to get in some states, that they're banning natural gas because of stupid reasons, and they don't really know what they're doing. Whoops, sorry, didn't mean to say that. But for some people, that might be an option. Kerosene heaters might be an option. It's a good idea. You know, there's the newer ones, the newer kerosene heaters have spill protection, but I'm going to say if you have small children or pets around, it's still a good idea to have an adult in the room at all times if you're running a kerosene heater. We had those in Kentucky when I lived in Kentucky. They work pretty good. And if you're worried about the smell, there's some additives that you can add to that to help with the smell. If you're running a kerosene heater, it's not a bad idea to crack a window. And I know that kind of sounds like, well, that defeats the purpose of letting the cold air in. Don't worry. The kerosene heater is going to generate enough heat to offset that. Let me see. I got some other comments here coming in. Yeah, Scott's got a good suggestion there, having a where you're going to go if things go crazy and you have to leave your primary location. Heat the rocks outdoors, put them in the bucket, and sit in the bucket. Okay, that's a great suggestion. I've actually never thought about that one. That's a great suggestion. Lee says he's got 2 stainless steel buckets full of rocks. You can heat the rocks outdoors with like a campfire, put them in the bucket, and then sit the bucket in the open oven door. That's going to generate some heat coming out of there. I like it. Lazarus Long says, practice being a MacGyver. If you don't have what you need, then try to figure out something else to stand in for it. Absolutely. It's great skills to have. If you guys watch Maccabeus Everyday Survival, he does a series called Everything is a Resource, where he shows like how to, how to take things that you find and turn them into lanterns and stuff like that. It's really cool. I'm going to scroll back up here for a second. Bear with me. Yep. So actually that was used. So Tammy says, somebody mentioned on another prepping channel that they picked up rat traps, not for rats, specifically for small grain rabbits and squirrels, and they're fairly inexpensive. That was one of the little hacks during the Great Depression, is people were using rat traps, nailing it to a tree, putting a little bit of bait on there, and then eating squirrel. Actually, the squirrel population in some parts of the United States got pretty thinned out during the Great Depression. Yep, that's a great suggestion, Lee. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. What else? So snaring, and there's books that you can get on this, snaring and trapping. What you need to know is legalities on that are during times where, we're not in kind of an emergency survival situation. The legality on that in a lot of states is it's not good. In a survival situation where, let's say, without rule of law, you're going to have to make your own decisions about how you feed your family. I would say a lot of people will be doing things like snaring and trapping. So it's not, you can get the books, you can get the kits, you can learn how to make things like a figure 4 deadfall trap, rat trap. Somebody said have a heart traps. There's all kinds of different options that you can work with to trap small game, which in a survival situation, that might be your food source. Let's see. We said hunting, fishing, gardening, and foraging. Again, if you don't have space, if you live in an apartment, you can still grow some stuff. If you have a balcony, you can grow some stuff. If you've got a window, you can grow, lettuces and herbs and things like that. You can grow microgreens. One of the things that we don't talk about a lot in the prepping community, which I think we should, is sprouting. Sprouting is something that everybody can learn. You don't need a lot of space to do it. You will have fresh food within 5 days. You don't even need like fancy lighting lamps or anything like that. Basically, you can go to, I've got a coupon in the description for a coupon code for Pine Tree Garden Seeds, www.superseeds.com, and go on there and get yourself some sprouting kits. You'll get a bag of seeds and the kit. And basically what you do is you put the seeds in either a jar or a sprouting bag. You add a little bit of water, drain it out. And then every day you add a little bit of water and drain it out. Within 5 days, you're going to have edible sprouts like you would buy at a fancy salad bar. It's the same thing. They're packed with nutrition. They have some vegetable proteins in there. You're going to get a ton of it with a very small amount of seeds. So like in terms of space storage for our apartment dwellers, this is a no-brainer. This is absolutely the way to go. I did one video on sprouting years ago. You can look that up. Just look up prepping with Sarge sprouting. I'll probably do another one at some point, but it is a skill that I don't understand why more preppers aren't talking about this. It's probably the most sustainable. Well, that might be a stretch. It's one of the most sustainable sources of food, especially for a small amount of space, and doesn't require any fancy lighting or even access to outdoors. You could do it in your basement. You could do it in a closet. You could do it under your kitchen cabinet. It's that easy, and it doesn't, and you're going to get a ton of food for very, very little effort. So learn how to do sprouting. It's a good one to learn. Animal husbandry, right? Like chickens, rabbits, goats, if you've got the space, cows, fish, right? There are preppers who have their own little fish ponds that are specifically for food fish. So those are all options that could give you a lot of long-term, possibly, if you don't lose it to somebody else or lose it to disease or something like that, possibly indefinite, right? There's a charity organization, I think it's called the Heifer Foundation or something like that. And what they do is they go into areas that are very impoverished in other parts of the world, and they will bring like goats and chickens and rabbits and things like that and teach them how to use that, how to take care of them and breed them so they have basically an indefinite amount of food. And then they've gone back and checked on these little villages in a year later, 2 years later, and what they found is that the nutrition level for everybody in the village goes up tremendously, which is great, longer lifespans, and also the intelligence level when you're well fed and your brain is well fed, the intelligence level goes up. And they also found that that most of these places had gotten so sustainable with it that they were able to sell food to nearby villages, so their economics of the village improved as well, right? So if you've got the space and the time and you're willing to learn how to do it, animal husbandry is like one of those top tier prepping skills, homesteading skills, if you want to call it that, right? Chickens, rabbits, goats, pigs, cows, possibly like tilapia fish or something like that. Yeah, it's a great way to go for long-term. Ducks, geese, turkeys, for long-term food sustainability. Before I go to my next part here, let me check the chat here. Let me check the chat. I think I scrolled too far up. I got to start using that little star thing. Yeah, learning how to trade a merchant and fixing things. That would be a great, people who can repair things. That would be a great skill to barter. People who can build things. That'd be a great skill to barter. Medical skills too. People are, if the system breaks down and you're thinking long term, the system's having problems. People with like dental skills and medical skills, your herbalists, your natural remedy people. Those would be great skills to barter. Yeah, sprouting's a great way to go, folks. Grab those supplies, practice it 1 or 2 times so you know what you're doing, and then you've got it set for a long time. There you go, sunflower. I love hearing that. I love hearing that. 4-H can teach some animal husbandry. Yep. All right. All right. So then, if we're going to take this one step further, I'm marking my star this time so I don't lose my spot. We're going to take this one step further. Now we've got the food for long-term sustainability. We need to also be thinking about food preservation. And there's a lot of different skills that you can learn for food preservation. Anything from freeze drying, which if you don't have the budget to buy a freeze dryer, that doesn't have to be the only option. It's a great option for those who want to make that investment. And then sealing it with Mylar and taking the air out of it. That's basically like building your own MREs in a way. But if you can't afford a freeze dryer right now, canning is very affordable to learn. A dehydrator is extremely easy to learn. So know the difference there between dehydrating and freeze drying, right? So dehydrator, they're very affordable. You can get them on Amazon. I've been using a Nesco one that I've had for 15 years now. Still works great. Buy some extra trays if you think you're going to be doing a lot all at once, and you get the books that go with it, so you learn what can be dehydrated and how to do it and how to store it. So like I can dehydrate peppers as an example from my garden and then put them in mason jars and then put them out of direct sunlight at room temperature, under a cabinet or in a cabinet or something like that, as long as they're away from direct sunlight, and they're good for a couple of years. Mushrooms dehydrate excellent. Herbs dehydrate excellent. You have to play around with them and kind of see what works for you and your family. But there's a lot of stuff can be dehydrated and stored, and it's going to give you some pretty good food storage options at a very, very affordable price. Very, very affordable. Canning is a little bit more to learn, but it's not. People get intimidated by canning. I did a video here with my sister, codename Alice. You guys can find that one where I show how to do canned blueberry jam. The only thing I'll say about canning is like it's affordable to learn, but people get intimidated by the learning curve. They're worried about the botulism and things like that. If you're careful and you follow directions, it's very, very low risk. If you follow directions and make sure everything's nice and clean, right? If you follow directions, it's very, very low risk. People have been canning for a very long time. Okay. So go check out my video on canning blueberry jam. And it's funny, my sister and I were kind of like bantering back and forth and telling some funny stories from childhood and that kind of thing. So canning is a great choice. Pickling is extremely easy to learn. Fermenting. That's not one that I've done, but I'm sure there's videos out there. In fact, if any of you who are in chat right now, if you've got a video on fermenting, go ahead and put the link up. Let's put it up there for people. Root cellars and understanding like what vegetables you can put in a root cellar, and those can be, you can put certain squashes in there and onions and carrots and some other things, root vegetables, into a root cellar, and basically it'll last all through the winter. It's building a root cellar on your property, not a bad idea. All right, let's go to chat again here, and then I got one more little piece of this, and then I'm going to close with a little discussion about free speech. So let's go back to chat. Yeah, thank you, Scott. If you guys got anything value out of this, please consider giving me a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing. Don't forget to check in the description down below for product links and discount codes for products that I think you will like. Sunflower wants to try sprouting alfalfa. Yeah, so I like them too. I will say the taste is very, very strong on sprouts, so it takes a little getting used to. I did radish sprouts, I think, in the video that I did for the channel, and it's a very, very strong radishy taste. But part of the reason that they taste so strong is it's loaded and packed with nutrition. I don't know what I said that I was attacking you, Bacon, but I apologize. I would never intentionally attack you. Fermenting anything. If you've got a video about fermenting anything, we'll just put it up there. Yep, vacuum sealing and put it in the freezer. Good choice. Yeah, I didn't even mention that. Thank you for saying that, Homestead Engineering. Blanching and freezing, right? Freezing your meat. If you're a hunter, freezing your meat, right? You can also, process that in different ways and make jerky and that kind of stuff too. So that's another food preservation technique. And there's ways to learn how to do that yourself. So blanching tomatoes, basically, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I did this. I think you have to have boiling water and then ice cold water, I think, if I remember that correctly. And then you put them in the boiling water, the tomatoes in the boiling water for a second, and then you put them in the ice cold water, and then you should be able to peel off the skin, and then you can freeze the rest of that tomato. If I said that wrong, now don't go on that. If you're gonna try and do this, please go ahead and look up the directions, because I'm just doing that off the top of my head. If I said that wrong, correct me in the chat, guys. It's been a while since I've done that. Well, Homestead Engineering, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you, and Bacon and Sunflower and anybody else that came in here in the latter half of this. All right, so I'm going to shift gears one more time here. And yeah, helping each, absolutely. Burpee Yoga Uncle says to have a buddy and you have things that helps each other out. Absolutely. Having a mutual assistance group. Going lone wolf in a long-term situation is going to be really, really hard. Really, really hard for people, because you have to sleep at some point and then you're vulnerable. All right, shifting it up one more time. If you're thinking about long-term prepping, then I'm going to say you also should be thinking about financial prepping as part of long-term prepping. And that can mean a couple different things. Number one, you want to have emergency cash, right? Emergency money that you can access quickly, not just for like power outages and storms and emergency bug outs because there's a chemical spill or a wildfire in your area, but for things that break, a tree limb lands on your roof and you need to get somebody fast. Money talks and cash is king. Okay. Car repairs, things like that. Cash is king. You can often get better results if you're willing to pay people in cash. I'll let you figure out why. So an emergency supply of cash, you don't necessarily have to keep it at home in a safe or anything like that. You can keep it in your bank, but you want to be able to get to it fast. It's not a bad idea to have some at home in a safe, right? Like, because that's going to be the quickest way that you can get to your cash. But thinking even beyond that, right? It's not a bad idea to think about 6 months of enough money to cover your mortgage or rent, whatever your groceries would typically be, your medications, your electricity, and your water bill, and if you have to have a vehicle, your whatever, your insurance and your car payment, right? Minimum, right? Minimum. Now that sounds insurmountable. I get it, right? I understand that. Start with trying to get a month. Try to save up a month's worth of finances, right? A budget that you could cover all your bills for 1 month. And then you start working from there, right? Eventually, if you stick with it and you keep diligent to it, eventually, whether it takes you 6 months or 6 years or 10 years, you will eventually get it if you stay diligent with it, right? And then why 6 months? Because most crises are resolved within that time period. Even if you lose your job, most people are going to be re-employed within 6 months, okay? So 6 months, the supply chain broke down. Within 6 months, there's a pretty good chance that things would be up and running again. If not, we're in a whole lot of trouble as a country. 6 months is a good rule of thumb, okay? Then, if you want to think about it beyond that, you should also be thinking about your retirement, right? Well, Sarge, you're a prepper. We don't think about retirement. We think that the zombies are going to rise and an EMP is going to take everything out. No, I don't think like that. I don't know that stuff's going to happen. I don't know that, we might make it another 5,000 years as humans. Do I think that's going to happen? No, but we might. And I'm at the age, and you really don't even think about it. Like I'm in my 50s, but whether you're in your 50s or your 20s, you should be thinking about retirement, because all these scenarios that we talk about, from zombies to EMPs to World War III, we don't know that it's going to happen. And at some point you are going to hit retirement age if it doesn't, and you need to have more than just canned peaches and Spam, right? I would not spend all your money on filling your basement full of canned peaches and Spam. That's me. If you choose to do that, that's on you. But I'm also planning for retirement, right? And that means I'm putting away as much as I can possibly afford into my IRA, my 403. Maybe you've got a 401. I buy silver and gold because it's a physical, tangible asset that is basically anonymous. Sarge, what happened to all that gold you had? I gave it away to homeless people. I don't have it anymore. I lost it in a boating accident, right? Um, you figure that one out. What about land assets, right? Land assets and properties. Properties could possibly generate some more income for you in your retirement. Build some businesses, right? This is all part of financial prepping. Build passive income. You guys know I like dividend producing stocks. What's that, Sarge? Well, there's certain companies that give a dividend back, which means they share their profit back with shareholders. So if you buy, for example, shares of Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola makes profit, Coca-Cola shares that profit with you in the form of dividends. If you build up enough of that, between companies like Coca-Cola and Caterpillar, and Caterpillar stock is doing amazing, by the way. B Pharmaceuticals, these are some of the ones that I own. That's why I'm naming them. 3M, these are companies that have been giving dividends for decades. I also own some tech companies that give dividends like Microsoft and Apple. So if you build up enough of that, you've actually got income coming in regularly. That's called passive income. Okay. So that's another part of financial preparedness. So I think this is part of prepping. There are people in the community who disagree with me and say they just think that the world is going to end, and so they don't worry about that. They're not saving a single dime. They're spending it all on cans of Spam and peaches. You are certainly welcome to do whatever you want with your money. I'm just telling you from my channel, that's not how we preach it here. We talk about financial prepping as part of prepping. Okay. All right. That's enough preaching from me. Well, not yet, because I do have a couple more things I want to preach about. Let me check the chat. Then we're going to check the poll. So if you haven't voted in the poll, now's your chance. Go to the top of the chat and vote in the poll. I want to know, do you think the TikTok deal is going to be good for the United States or not? And then I'm going to end out. We're going to have a little discussion about free speech, and we're going to call it a night. All right. Let's scroll back on your chat here. Go vote now if you haven't. I agree with you, Scott Hummer. I think lone wolf preppers are going to have a very, very hard time. Brad Azell, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the channel. I appreciate you. What if the dollar is worthless? Well, that's why I personally am dividing up into different assets like silver and gold. I do believe owning property is a great idea as well. You can also even own some foreign currencies. I used to do some of that. I've kind of backed off of that. I used to buy euros and Canadian dollars just to diversify my cash a little bit. I've kind of backed off on that, but you certainly can do that as well. That's right. Hey, you know what? We didn't even talk about that, but insurance, again, that's another one that you guys have to decide for yourselves. I think insurance is a good prep in a lot of cases. I think rental insurance is a good idea. You definitely need to have car insurance if you're driving, homeowners insurance. We can get into a discussion of how like some of these companies try to get out of paying. I get it. I prefer to have good insurance myself. Do your own research on that and make your own decisions. Not a bad idea. Yep. Every time, instead of spending all your coins, keep throwing in them in a jar or a piggy bank or whatever you've got. That's that can be used to buy your preps too, or it can be used as like a little extra emergency cash. Amen to that, Lazarus Long. And the truth is, most of us are going to need, if we make it to retirement, we're probably going to need more than we think we need. And you can be, yes, thank you, Tuck by V. Thank you for joining us, by the way, too. You can be forced into it. You can be forced into retirement early. I hope that doesn't happen to me. I have a goal. I want to try to get to 65, maybe 67. We'll see how my health is at that point. That's my goal. But, best laid plans of mice and men. What if something happens and I can't work anymore? Turn gold into lead. Hey, that's another precious metal as well. Brass and lead. I didn't even get into that, other than to say, I think I said in part 2, you have to think about your protecting your family in whatever way that means for you. Because if things get really bad and the bad guys come looking for you, begging and pleading is not going to help you. It is not going to help you. So you need to have some plan, whatever you decide for your family, of how you're going to protect yourself. Maybe that involves brass and lead. But if you're going to go that route, I would also recommend you get some training as well. Hey, listen, if I could, I would hop on a spaceship. I would absolutely do that. I would absolutely do that. Oh, so I'm glad you asked that, Bacon. So just so you know, for all of you, if you bring your jar of coins to like a Coinstar or whatever, they do take, is it like 10%? I don't know because I don't do that, but they take a piece of that, and that's 10% is not insignificant. I get rolling them up is kind of a pain. I understand. But I mean, I'd me, I guess I'm cheap. I'd rather keep that 10% and just like roll them as I'm watching some movies and stuff like that. Roll up your coins. Uh Good evening, South Florida Douglas. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you. Credit union has a machine like Coinstar deposit. No charge. That's what we're talking about right there, Lee. Good deal. Good deal. Yeah, piggy banks are cool. It's a good way to go. Invested in my son's college. It was um yeah, and I've got a master's degree, not trying to brag. We talked about this in a different live stream. Um the economics of college education has significantly changed from when I went to school. And by the way, I still have a school loan that I'm still paying on. I'm not trying to like look for sympathy or anything like that. It is what it is. Those are the choices I made. I don't expect anybody else to pay for that. That was my decision. But the economics of college education has gotten harder. I'm not going to get too much into this tonight, but we can definitely hit it on another stream. I'll just say that if you're thinking, if it's 2025 and you're thinking about sending your kids off to college, I would sit them down and have a really good discussion about what degree they want to go after and is it going to be worth it for the amount of money that you're going to spend, right? So, obviously, technical schools and trade schools are another option as well. State schools can probably save money for a lot of people, state universities. Private colleges, it starts getting very expensive. And if you want to go into like, okay, I want to become a school teacher. Well, we know the school teacher's top end salary. I'm not picking on school teachers, by the way. I've got many, many friends who are a school teacher. My wife used to be a school teacher. But we know the top end salary of a school teacher is not huge. And so maybe if you're thinking about that, maybe you might want to go to a state university instead of that private school that's going to cost $60,000 a year, because you're looking at $60,000 a year for a 4-year degree, 160, right? Or no, sorry, 140. Is that right? No, I'm sorry. 240,000. Wow, math. 240,000. See, I actually do have a master's degree. 240,000, right? Is that right? 120, 120, 240. Yeah. $240,000 for a teaching degree. You're never going to pay that off. There are some government programs and things like that. I will tell you, there are many people who have struggled to get approved for those things. I would not count on that. Again, make your own decisions. I'm not trying to live anybody else's life or anything like that, but the economics of a college degree has gotten really, really hard, really, really hard. So if you're thinking about that, I would really strongly encourage people to think about what degree are you going to go after and is it going to pay off? Or if you're going to go after like something like engineering, that's going to pay off, right? That's going to pay off because engineering jobs pay really well. Be careful with IT. A lot of IT jobs are getting replaced with AI right now, right? And so that's another factor people are going to have to take into account. Whatever degree you want to go after, what are the chances that within 5 years, 10 years, AI could replace it? I think you need to take that into consideration right now. I hope that it doesn't happen like that, but it's looking like it's probably going to happen like that, right? I think AI is going to displace a lot of jobs. It's already happening in some sectors. All right, let me yeah, I see that, Lee. I'm going to get to that in a second. That's a great suggestion. All right, let me scroll back here a little bit. But it can't, yeah. So Scott, it can be a college education can be a great investment for people. It's just people have to be careful with it. That's all, right? Hey, Orlando Prepper, thanks for joining us. Happy Friday. All right, scrolling. Um, yeah, and software engineers, some sectors are going to be okay. I think. I hope cybersecurity is going to be okay. I think the more advanced and technical your skills get, the harder, obviously, it is to replace. A lot of the AI, a lot of the IT jobs that are getting replaced by AI right now are kind of entry level programming positions. So if anybody's going into this, I would encourage them get skilled up, work on your skills, and get to like a higher level than entry level programming, so that you've got some job security. All right, so Lee's suggestion here, this is awesome. Let me put up on the board. Electric co-op lineman, very good paying job. Doesn't take a lot of time in school to get your degree or certification to do that, and good benefits. And if you like to travel, they'll send you around to areas that have storm damage. A lot of overtime pay is available. I think Lee's suggestion there is a great one. Yeah, that's a great point there too, Bacon. I mean, there's nothing wrong with like people coming out of high school and working for a couple of years while they figure it out. Get some life experience. There's nothing wrong with that. I'll tell you, it is harder. I took a year off between my undergraduate degree and my graduate school degree, and it was hard to go back. And I imagine that the longer you wait, the harder it is to go back. You know, if I wanted to go back for my doctorate, for example, the idea of that is so overwhelming to me. And no, I don't have any interest in that. Um, with in my field, it wouldn't help me a whole lot, anyways. It would just be a fancy title that I could put on my name, and people would have to call me doc. I could make people call me doctor, but um, uh, it kind of depends, right? It kind of depends on what you want, your degree, and that kind of thing. Um, yeah, don't rush it. Don't rush it. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Scott. And so did a close friend of mine, actually one of my best friends, actually, who had 25 years in IT, is making a career change now in his early 50s. Well, I could see that potentially being useful if people want a government sector job, right? Again, it just depends. Yeah, all of those are good suggestions right there. What Orlando Prepper is saying, any of the trades are not going to be as easily replaced by AI. And after your first year or two, doing your apprenticeship and whatnot, you're gonna be able to skill up pretty fast. Probably open up your own business soon after that, and then it's going to be pretty well paying career. And also, you're also going to save your. Here's the other thing: is like somebody who's not technical. I usually have to pay people to fix my car, and if there's something electric wrong with my house, electrically. If there's something wrong with the electricity in my house, I got to pay an electrician to come in and do that, because I don't have that skill set. And let me tell you, I got to cut a lot of money to do that. You could save yourself a lot of money on your own work, on your car, in your home, on your electricity and plumbing and things like that. Plumbing's not, in my opinion, I can do some minor plumbing, but electrical stuff I don't mess with. I don't mess with it. I wish that I had spent some time learning how to do car repair. Um, I know that like you have to stay with it, right? Because the cars have changed so much from when I was a young whippersnapper driving in the 80s. Yeah, that's why I don't mess with it, Orlando. That's why I don't mess with it. And I know, I mean, I've got friends who are electricians who they still get zapped. Like they'll cut the power at the box, and there's still sometimes trickle that will come through, and they're still getting zapped. All right, let's go ahead. So if you were here for just that kind of prepping stuff, thank you so much for joining us. I'm about to shift gears here a little bit. Just want to talk a little bit about free speech. So if you're brand new to the channel, usually at the end of the live streams, I do talk a little bit of like, life stuff and try to give a positive message and things like that. So Jimmy Kimmel got fired this week. And it's interesting to me that I see all of a sudden people are interested in free speech. I say it's interesting because free speech has actually been under attack for a while now. And we know from whistleblowers from Meta and Twitter that the Biden-Harris administration was having government people call Meta and Twitter and probably the other ones as well and saying, take down this post, suppress this post, delete this account, shadow ban this person. That's been disclosed. That's not conspiracy theory. That's been disclosed by the whistleblowers. There's several books out there where you can read about this. When voices that you disagreed with were getting suppressed and people were saying this, they're like, hey, this is weird. I feel like I'm shadow banned. No, you're crazy. You don't have a popular opinion, right? That's the gaslighting that went on. If you didn't care that other people's voices were being silenced just because you didn't agree with it, then you really have to ask yourself, are you a free speech advocate? Because you can't have it both ways. Free speech is for everybody. Okay. Even people that you disagree with. I talked about Charlie Kirk last week that I don't necessarily agree with some of the things that Charlie Kirk said, but I respect that he allowed other people to speak, that he wanted to hear what other people had to say. And he was teaching people how to debate. Okay. I wasn't necessarily a Jimmy Kimmel fan either. Right. Like, I don't think I've ever watched his show, to be honest with you. I would see his clips sometimes on the news. He was kind of funny, but I don't necessarily agreed with a lot of his politics. But do I think he should have been ripped off the air? No, I don't agree with that because I'm a free speech advocate. Now, a while back, I had a conversation here about free speech, and actually, our friend Burpee Yoga Uncle said, I think I said something like, I support free speech except for hate speech, and Burpee Yoga Uncle said, well, then you don't support free speech or something like that. And I had to think about it. And he was right. Honestly, he was right. I don't have to like hate speech. I have some ability to, on my channel, because this is my channel, I can regulate that. And I can say, if you post hate speech, I'm going to delete it and I'm probably going to block you. But in the grander scheme of things, people have a right to say what they want to say, no matter how awful it is, up to a point where like you're threatening somebody or you're inciting violence. That's where generally the courts have said this is where free speech ends, right? So we know free speech has consequences, and I think there's some natural consequences to these things, right? Like, so if somebody goes on and they say something deeply offensive, let's say they use the N-word or something like that, then we as a community can use our free speech to say, hey, that's not okay. You're not going to do that here, right? So we can use our free speech to counter hate speech, right? But at the end of the day, free speech is for everybody, and we can't say that we support free speech only when it's convenient for us. And I had to think about that because because that's why I tell you guys there are people in this community, and why I ask you to articulate your points, because there's people in this community have caused me to self-reflect and change my own opinion. That's why we have debate. That's why we have discussions, because sometimes I'm wrong, right? And sometimes you're wrong, and we can talk these things out, and we can stop, we can do these things without resorting to violence. There are people now who are very upset because they've lost their jobs, because they made a mockery of Charlie Kirk being assassinated. And they're saying, well, what about my free speech? Okay, this is complicated, isn't it, folks? Because your employer does technically have the right to, you can say those things. You can go online and you can make a mockery of Charlie Kirk or Jimmy Kimmel if you want to do that. You can do those things, but it doesn't mean there's no consequences to that, right? Because we also have to take it again, look back to what happened a few years ago. Gina Carano lost her job with Disney because of things that she posted on Twitter. I have a feeling that the same people who are saying, well, why did I lose my job because of what I said about Charlie Kirk, were celebrating when Gina Carano lost her job for what she said on Twitter. We can't have our cake and eat it too, folks, right? We can't. So I welcome more people to the free speech cause. I really do. But I want you to think about, if this is something that you're very fired up about because Jimmy Kimmel got fired. Okay. I don't like it either. I will say that, even though I didn't necessarily agree with everything he said, I will say I don't think he should have been fired for it. But free speech is for everybody. And if you don't believe that, then you just like Jimmy Kimmel. You don't like free speech because you only want it for certain people, right? Am I making sense here, folks? Just stuff for you to think about. You're welcome to disagree with me and articulate why you disagree with me. I will go back and read your comments. I always do. And let's go ahead. I want to end with that. I want to go ahead and check your poll here. So let's take a look at that, and then I'll look at your comments one more time, and then I'm going to call it a good night. So let's see. What do we say? Oh, wow. I did not expect that. 73% of you say that, 15 votes, 73% of you say that the TikTok deal is not going to be a good thing for the United States. I think we're going to have a stream about that. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. Yeah, I did not expect that. I expected more 50-50. Wow. Okay. All right. Let me check your comments one more time here, and then we're going to call it a night, folks. Scrolling. Oh, I went too far. Oh, I went way too far. There you go. So Lee was a victim of that. Yeah, where were all these free speech advocates when that happened? I think that there might be more to that story, and it might be coming out. I mean, let's be honest, though. We know that Trump didn't like Jimmy Kimmel. That's not been a big secret, right? Yeah, it could have been a retaliation. It feels retaliatory to me. It feels retaliatory. That's it right there. Bacon said it better than I could have. Not exactly uncommon for folks to suddenly become interested about a right being attacked when their own interests are in their crosshairs. Yep. Yeah, cancel culture is also for everybody now. Right? Be careful what we do, right? We create, I'm not saying me or you, the audience. I'm not saying that. We, people, humans, we created this thing called cancel culture where you can go and basically get somebody shut down, ruin their life, get them in trouble with their employer. So you created it, and then it can become weaponized against you. And that's true for just about everything, right? Yep. Thank you, Homestead Engineering. Yeah. And by the way, I think this Jimmy Kimmel thing that there's going to be more to this. I think there's going to be lawsuits. Who knows how far that will go, if it could go all the way to the Supreme Court. ABC's already hinting around that they're trying to find a path to bring him back in. That is not going to make Mr. Trump happy. So I don't think that will be the end of it for him. Like, it's just this cycle goes on and on, folks. And honestly, as a country, personally, I think we got better things to do than to worry about what Jimmy Kimmel's doing at late night. Like, maybe his ratings were low. So, the people who are watching him probably were most likely people who agreed with him. So it's just this like echo chamber, just like anything else, any other audience, right? Like, people are going to be drawn to people that they agree with. So what's the point, right? Like, what is it? I think we got bigger things in our country to worry about than what Jimmy Kimmel was saying at 11 p.m. Was it disrespectful? Yeah. Was it bad taste? Yeah. He's not the only one that's done that. Let's be honest. You guys know I'm a South Park fan. Has anybody been more bad taste than South Park over the years. Saturday Night Live has been in bad taste many, many times, right? Like, so he's not the only one that's done something that you're like, ooh, too soon. That is not funny, dude. That is not funny. He just happened to be the one that was in the limelight this week. Nobody should be calling for violence. I agree, Scott. Nobody should. That is not how we solve our problems. I will stand up against that until we get to the point where we're now at a civil war and that discussion is no longer an option. We should not be calling for violence with each other. I think this is the worst thing we can do. That's it. That's a great definition of it there. Like, you have to be okay with it. I agree, Sunflower. I agree. And, I don't like The View, right? I don't like The View. But some people do. And I don't think I wouldn't want to see The View pulled off the air either, just because I don't like it, just because I don't agree with it. Most companies do have social media clauses that you can go on, and if you misrepresent the company, you could be fired. That is true. That's okay, Lee. Yeah, I might talk about the TikTok thing next week. We'll see. If there's something bigger going on in the news, obviously I got to take that into consideration, but I'll consider it. We could do a deep dive on it. If one, I'm not sure if I'm reading this right. If one works for a company, one can call the CEO fat and ugly. You shouldn't be. If you call your CEO fat and ugly, you're probably getting fired, right? Yeah, I mean, well, and there's been news people, mainstream media newscasters who've said, I've heard them. I listen to a lot of the news. I've heard them say awful things, terrible things. That's part of the free speech too, right? I mean, maybe we're going to end up, maybe what ends up happening in this is free speech is going to get redefined. And that's kind of a scary thought, folks. So I think it's already been watered down. I think it's already been whittled away. Oh, for sure. There's some YouTubers that have a bigger audience than mainstream media and talk show hosts. For sure, that's definitely true. I mean, so from like the millennials on, a lot of them don't watch TV. They might stream like and binge shows and stuff like that. But if you ask a lot of young people, they don't watch CNN or Fox News. They might catch some clips that somebody sends to them, but they're not usually, most of them are not watching the news like I do. Yes and yes to both Sunflower and Scott. I do think that there's some manipulation that's going on from enemies of the United States that are stirring this up. Right there, I agree with you, Tammy. I agree with you. All right, let's go. Yeah, I saw that, Scott. That's I'm even afraid to. I'll be honest with you. I'm even afraid to talk about that last one, Scott's comment there, because I travel and I don't want to run into a problem. That's making me very nervous. What's going on over there? So I'm not even going to talk about that on my channel. I don't feel comfortable because it could put a problem on me when I'm traveling. It's very concerning though. It's very concerning. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and close this one out. I want to say thank you so much for hanging with me this Friday night. You could be doing lots of other things. Thanks for sharing a part of your weekend with me. If you haven't already done so, please consider giving me a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to check in the description down below for some products and discount codes that I think you will like. Enjoy your weekend. Do something fun with your family. Hug your loved ones, and I will see you next week. Keep planting your seeds. Keep stacking your silver. This is Prepping with Sarge. All right, everybody.